5 most frightening things caught on police body cam. Being a policeman is a tough job. We all know that. But maybe, just maybe, you have no idea just how hard it is to put on the uniform and do the job no matter the situation. And so today, we are going to help you understand just how frightening it is to be a police officer. We are going to be looking at the 5 most frightening things ever caught on police body cam. Before we get into it, you don't want to miss number 1 because it is truly heart-rending. So stick with us as we dive right into it, starting at number 5. This is the case of a woman that was heard screaming for help from a broken window in a house. August 16, 2023 was the date recorded on the body cam, and the time was 19:22 p.m. Earlier that day, the serene silence of Louisville, Kentucky was disturbed by the screams coming from a room on the second story of a building. Concerned neighbors quickly called the police to come check it out, but what followed was more than they had anticipated. Upon arriving, they found out that all the entrances on the first floor were completely barricaded, but they noticed a broken window on the next floor. They got a ladder and laid it against the wall to climb up to the broken window. And that's when they got the real shocker. As the cop draws closer to the window, he hears sounds of a woman whimpering and saying some words which are not fully audible. He enters the building and finds a grown woman in tears and drenched with sweat, chained from her neck to her hands to a bed. She is totally frightened and frisky. He asked her where the key to the padlock used on her is, but she says she doesn't know and begins to apologize. This cop then goes on to break the chain and free the woman, who is still thanking him and apologizing, before the paramedics begin to treat her. As the police investigate further, they find out that the woman had a quarrel with her estranged boyfriend, who asked her to strip, cut her hair with a machete, and threatened to kill her. She said she only had a few minutes to get out because he got a call from his friend and promised to kill her when he got back. Can you imagine how she must have felt when she was crying out for help? What if her ex had come back before the cops? Or what if her neighbors didn't do anything when I heard the sound of her voice? Man, I don't even want to think about it. But if you think this video is frightening, wait till you see number 4. How would you react if you saw blood on the stairs leading to your basement in the late hours of the afternoon? We've all seen this kind of stuff happen in the movies and the cartoons. But what if it actually happened in real life? This is exactly what happened to this unsuspecting couple on the 22nd of February 2022 in a little country home in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The police got a call in the late afternoon about a disturbance at a family home and were asked to come and investigate. The man explains to the cops that he saw something unsightly in his basement, but he is still in shock. Still doubting what his eyes saw in his own basement, he explained that he had seen something bloody in the basement, but had no idea what exactly it was. If the cops thought it was weird, they had no idea that things were about to get a whole lot worse. As the police descend into the basement, they are accompanied by the loud sound of silence, so deafening you can almost hear their hearts beating in their chests. Entering the basement, they flash their lights around, trying to make sense of the whole scene, until their torch flashes on the object in question. Earlier, they approached the bucket at the base of the stairs, and when they eventually point the torch at the bucket, another silence deafens the room. Nothing could have prepared the cops for the gory picture of a decapitated, bloody head that sat silently in the bucket, right next to the victim's castrated penis. Investigations would later reveal that this was the handiwork of the victim's girlfriend, who had killed him in a bit of sexual expression, trying on BDSM techniques of strangulation. The boy's mother had discovered his head in the early hours of that day and made the call to the police to come and investigate. How sick is that? As sick as this video is, the most frightening one is still on the way. Keep watching as we take a dive further into what a cop can run into in the line of duty. You know what's more frightening than seeing a decapitated head? Being shot at. And that's what brings us into number 3. Imagine going on patrol in response to a distress call of an alleged suicidal victim, and you pull up with your team, mentally prepared to talk the victim out of jumping or shooting or hanging themselves. But instead, you're met with gunfire. On the 12th of June 2024, three unsuspecting officers in Ogle County, Illinois responded to an emergency call from a suicidal threat. As the three officers draw closer to the house, they have their equipment to break down the door in the hopes of saving a life. What they don't know is that their own lives are about to be put at risk. Arriving in front of the door, they use their battering ram to push the door down and make entry into the home. But as they pry the door open, that's when things take a turn for the worse. The air erupts with a repeated sound of gunshots as the police officers find themselves caught in what apparently was an ambush. These brave rescue officers are now trapped in a life or death scene so scary, one of the officers begins to scream into his telecom. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" You can hear the desperation in his voice as they run away from the door where the bullets are coming from. One of the officers is shot and lies on the floor, forcing his teammates to go back into the line of fire to retrieve him before he gets any more fatal shots. Another officer is on the floor in the corner of the house, and they have to hurriedly apply first aid to his injury amidst ragged breathing to get the situation under control. Just imagine if this were you, going into the line of duty to save someone and then having to fight for your own life. Shout out to our hero cops. But the worst is still yet to come. Number 2 is just downright sick. You probably heard of or watched one of those scenes out of a movie or an anime where an assassin is contracted to take out a high-profile person. Well, that was the case here, except the person was not high profile at all. It started out as your average day on the 26th of July 2023 in Trafford, Manchester. A group of British officers rushed over to an accident scene, trying to understand what had happened and help the victims of the crash. Little did they know that they were about to receive the shock of their lives. As they inspect the scene, the body cam of one of the officers picks up a strange man in black clothes walking down the street. The officers think nothing of it and continue inspecting the area. But as soon as the strange man notices that they are not looking in his direction, he attacks the officer who is isolated. He attacks the officer trying to stab him in the neck, and then repeatedly assaults him. While the officer was down, he rushed toward the second officer. But now they were already on high alert. You know how your body just goes into fight or flight mode, especially since he is a trained officer. He bodies the tackle, and the two of them land on the ground where they continue struggling till the third officer gets a clean shot in and stops the man in his tracks with the taser. Quickly, one officer rushes the bleeding officer to a nearby ambulance for aid with his blood still spilling all over, while his friend consoles him and tells him, "You will be all right." That's life or death right there on the streets of Manchester. Yet, number 1 is an entirely different ballgame. Just before we get into it, this would be a good time to subscribe, like, and turn on your notifications so you can get updated whenever we upload a post. Done? Great. Let's get back into it. Our most frightening incident actually starts out pretty casually. As casual as you can think of. It's just another day in Olive Garden Mall in Millenia, Orlando on the 28th day of May, 2022. The police receive a call from some girls in the mall who have been disturbed by an apparently drunk young man. An officer in the mall begins to search for the young man using the descriptions provided. And when he finds him, he treats him respectfully and asks him to bring out the alcohol in his bag. The boy cooperates with the officer and hands over the bottle, explaining that he is 19 and he's a little drunk. However, his face is visibly shaken. And while this looks like it is because the officer has caught him with alcohol, the real reason is much more shocking. The officer, understanding how it is to be young, decides not to put the young man's life in jeopardy by turning him in. He decides to let him go with just a lecture. As they step out of the mall, the officer casually asks if the young man has any other incriminating items on him so he can take it out and get away, to which the boy initially says no. But That's where things take a turn for the worse. The boy admits to having weed on him. When the cop asked him to submit it, the boy resists, saying that the officer can't search his stuff without his permission. The officer still tries to play it cool and asks him again to submit it, but instead of submitting it, the boy turns around and makes a run for it. Okay, not weird yet, right? I don't know why they always run, but even running would have been okay in comparison to what he does next. As he makes some ground away from the cop, the boy does something absolutely unexpected. He turns around, faces the cop, pulls out an unlicensed gun, and shoots at him before turning and running off again. The cop chases him down while calling for backup. In a final twist, the young man chooses death over jail and takes his own life. That's all for today, folks. These are our 5 most frightening things caught on police body cam. But now, we'd like to hear from you. Do you think we've missed out on any frightening incidents? Let us know in the comments.